In today's video, we're going to be discussing the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to be taking a look at some stats, and I'm going to give you my opinion on whether or not I think they're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, what's going on? My name is Mike, and welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. If you're just browsing through and this is your first time here, welcome to the channel. On this channel we discuss all 31 NHL teams, we cover all the latest news, stats, highlights, etc. So if you're a big hockey fan and you want to keep up with all the latest news, consider subscribing so you don't miss any of our future videos. Alright, diving into today's content, let's get into the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, are the Maple Leafs a legitimate contender? Let's discuss. Alright, so obviously the Leafs are off to a great start, have a 3-1 record. Now, obviously there's a lot of pros and cons and things going on with this team. Now I want to take a look at both sides to see what they're doing well and where they need to improve to decide whether or not they are a legitimate contender for a division title, possibly an Eastern Conference Championship, or even a Stanley Cup. So let's take a look. Let's start with the pros, things going well for the Leafs. Obviously the main thing is they're scoring in bunches, which is great. And they're getting it from a variety of players. Obviously, they're young guns like Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner are off to good starts. Veteran Patrick Marleau seems to be fitting in well. James Van Riemsdyk, who is on a contract year, he seems to be producing at a good rate. Even Tyler Bozak. They're getting good offense from a variety of players. And if you look back at their decor, Nikita Zaitsev is pitching in pretty well on the offense as well. So offensively, they're firing on all cylinders. Now, I guess the only question is, can they keep it up? And really, I don't have any concerns as that they should be able to do that or should not be able to do that. I mean, realistically, if you look at the offensive talent with this team, you know, yeah, they could slow down, but they have all kinds of offensive talent. They're scoring goals in bunches. That seems to be going well. The power play is clicking. You know, from an offensive standpoint, you really can't get a whole lot better. But let's take a look at some cons now, some things that are not going so well for the Leafs, and here's where my concerns are. One question mark with the Leafs going through this season is what are they going to do with some of their veterans? Obviously players like Tyler Bozak and James Van Riemsdyk are going to be needing new contracts. Do they keep them? Do they sign them extensions? It's hard to say really. I know if you look back before things really improved for the Leafs, obviously last year was a breakthrough year with all of their super rookies, I guess we'll call them. You know, and obviously they had a re-emergence, made the playoffs and made a good little run and greatly improved their team. If you would have said anything prior to that, you'd expect most of the veteran clear-out that we've seen in the last few years prior to that to continue, and you might not see a return for a Bozak or a JVR. However, now there's question marks. But the big thing that is going to impact things more than anything, not just whether or not these players, if the player wants to stay, then you have to factor in, does the team want them? Are they producing? But it's going to come down to salary cap issues as well. They have a lot of top young forwards like Matthews and Marner and Nylander who are going to be coming out of their entry-level contract soon and are going to be needing extensions as well. They're going to be commanding top dollar. I mean, there's already rumors floating around that Austin Matthews is going to be commanding $13 million a year. Now, whether or not he gets that, I guess time will tell, but it won't be off by much, that's for sure. I mean, he will be making up similar to what McDavid was making. I mean, obviously, when McDavid signed his contract, you know, everybody said that he didn't take the max value that he could have possibly taken, as he wanted to give the Oilers a little bit more flexibility to build around him. Now, whether or not Matthews Camp will do the same type of deal, I guess time will tell. Either way, though, it's going to be a lot of money tied up between those guys. They're not going to want to give up on young prospects like Nylander and Marner. I wouldn't think so. And these guys are all going to likely be getting longer-term contracts. Some, I mean, Matthews will probably get the max. Nylander and Marner maybe a little shorter, hard to say. Either way, they have a lot of money tied up, and those are going to play roles as well. But I guess I still look at this as a pro, because either way, you got guys that are veterans on contract years. They need to play well. Regardless if they play with the Leafs or another team, they're going to want to be signed. They're going to want to continue their playing careers. They need to make themselves attractive. So that's a pro that they're going to be getting good production out of these players, and they've started well. So if they keep that up, that's great for them. And what's the worst that happens? they have the option to make deadline trades. That's a possibility. Or even if it rolls into the offseason, depending on where things go, they can always maybe trade these players before their contract expires for negotiating rights or something. Either way, you can expect some production of these guys. But down in the comments, let me know, what do you think? I want to hear from Leafs fans especially, but everybody else can give me their opinion too. Are the Leafs going to keep Bozak and JVR? Are they going to be Leafs next year? Are they going to be getting extensions? Or do you see them being traded? Or do you see them leaving in free agency? Give me your thoughts. I want to know what you think. All right, now let's take a look at some areas of the Leafs that I have as concerns. Now, obviously, like I mentioned in the beginning, they're scoring in bunches, which is great. The bad news, they're giving up goals in bunches, which is obviously very bad. If you look at their goals for, goals against for the season, they're +6. They're 22 goals for, 16 against. However, here's the thing to keep in mind. If you take away the first game of the year, which was against the Winnipeg Jets, where they had a landslide 7-2 victory, you take that out of the picture. 22 minus 7 gives you 15. 16 minus 2, 14. That means in the last 3 games, they're outscoring their opponents 15-14. 15 goals over 3 games is an average of 5. That's pretty good. I think most NHL teams would be super happy scoring 5 goals a game in today's NHL. But giving up 14 goals in 3 games, which is just a hair shy of 5, that is not so good. Obviously, their D and their goaltending hasn't been fantastic. Now, in a second here, I'm going to get into some other statistics, which will show my concerns and areas that they need to improve on. All right, now I'm going to do a little breakdown here of some of their players' stats. We're looking at goals for and against, and their plus minus, and some giveaways and takeaways. We're going to start with some of their forwards that really stick out in this category. You're going to start with JVR. JVR has 5 points, but he's -4. Mitch Marner has 4 points, but he's -5. Then you've got Tyler Bozak, who's got 4 points, but he's -3. When you get all these goals scored, there's really not too many good excuses for their forward group to have plus minuses like this. However, one thing that is a little bit surprising is to see these guys, especially JVR and Bozak, have stats the way they do. But then you look at their younger kids like Matthews and Nylander, and even though they're getting lots of points, their plus minus is much better. So that's a good sign going forward. As obviously that was one of the knocks on Matthews last year a little bit. If there was a knock on his game, is that he had to improve defensively. But as a rookie, you had to give him some slack on that. But it goes to show that those 2 guys are getting better. Now let's look at their defense score, which is a much more of a concern than a couple of forwards. Obviously, the forwards need to pitch in on team defense as well. Not really a lot of good excuses to have a decent amount of points and a bad plus minus. But as a defenseman, obviously, most of their defense, they're not super offensive. So they need to be contributing in other ways. So let's take a look at their top defenseman in terms of ice time points, which is Nikita Zaitsev. Now, obviously, Zaitsev got a huge contract extension over the summer. It was a little bit criticized by a fair bit of media. I know Don Cherry was against it quite a bit. I was quite surprised as well. I wasn't shocked that they wanted to keep him and sign him longer term. I was a little bit surprised at the length of the contract and the value. I guess time will tell whether or not that was a good deal. But for today, we're not discussing contract, we're looking at his stats. So Nikita Zaitsev, so far he actually has 5 points, which is good, more than a point per game, and he's +7. That's actually quite good. However, the one concern with Zaitsev is that he gives away the puck too much. If you look at the giveaway, takeaway stats, and all these stats, by the way, come from NHL.com in case you're wondering where I'm getting these or if I'm accurate or not. He's at -4 in the giveaway, takeaway category, which is not great. Obviously, as a defenseman who's out there playing lots of key minutes, you need to be, you don't want to be giving away the puck. After Zaitsev, things kind of go downhill from there. So let's take a look first at the remaining of the top 4 defensemen. Let's look at Jake Gardiner. Plays almost just shy of 21 minutes per game. He's got 3 points. He's +3, but he's got 8 giveaways. This guy has been developing for a few years now. There's always been lots of commentary around his play and how much he's going to improve, but he's still giving the puck away way too much. Take a look at Morgan Rielly. He plays a little bit more than Gardiner, not much, but close to 21.5 minutes. He has 3 points on the season, but he's -4, and his giveaway takeaway ratio was a -1. So he's got 3 giveaways, 2 takeaways. So Rielly, even though he's he's getting better, he does contribute. He's a decent defenseman, but Rielly and Gardiner really need to step up their game. They're still giving away the puck too much, and their defensive play still needs to get better. If you look at the other part of the top 4, which is Ron Handsy, which at his age, yes, he can contribute. Obviously, he won a Stanley Cup with Pittsburgh last year. Not really sure that he's a top 4 guy. I know he ended up playing a much bigger role with the Penguins than they ever anticipated last year after they picked him up. But he was mainly brought into Pittsburgh to be a third pairing guy. And when the Leafs brought him in, I think he was brought in with a higher level of expectation. Now, if he was a third pairing guy, I think things would be better. Overall, their defensive core would be better. But if you look at his stats, he's got 3 points. He's playing 21 minutes a game. He's a +1, but he also has 4 giveaways. So, overall, their top 4 defense are all playing over 20 minutes a game. They're all contributing a bit on the offense, which is good. Obviously, when they're feeding the puck up to the forwards that they have, it's easy to pick up assists. So, not to knock their offensive abilities, but when you're feeding the puck to Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Marleau, Kadri, etc., it does make it a little bit easier to get lots of points. So I really take a look more at their defensive stats to really show their total value here. And as a top 4 defense, I think when it comes to moving the puck, they're pretty solid. Defensively, they still need a lot of work, and they're giving away the puck way too much. As I mentioned earlier, they have some forwards that are going to need contracts. It's hard to say if they're going to be able to or want to keep them. Right now, those forwards are producing at a good rate. One way for the Leafs to really step up their game, to really make sure that they solidify themselves as more of a contender, might be to use one of those guys to get another solid defenseman to really shore up their D-core. So in closing, here are my thoughts on the Leafs. Are they a contender for the Stanley Cup or the Eastern Conference Championship? I don't think so, not yet. I think that in a year or 2 we might have more of a conversation to argue that. For this season, I will argue that if they can shore up their defensive play, they can rival for the Atlantic Division lead and possibly finish first. In my Eastern Conference prediction video, which I'll link up here, I did have them making the playoffs, and I put them in a wild card spot. Now, I do believe that because of some other teams' play and how they've started, they could prove me wrong and move up a little bit, and possibly, most likely actually, finish in the top 3. I'm not sure if they'll finish first, but I think they will be a contender for the division. But not a guarantee that they're going to win it. I think some other teams will give them a good run as well. But I think the biggest thing around the Leafs and the biggest thing that's going to impact their season is, can they improve their defensive play? They've proven they can score. That's not a problem. But they need to keep the puck out of their net. Obviously, they still give away the puck too much. Goaltending needs to get better. They haven't played their backups yet. So we'll see what's going to happen here. But are the Leafs a contender? Not yet, but they're going to be if things continue at this on the improvements that they've been making. Now, in the comments below, I want to know your thoughts. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Are the Leafs still a year or 2 away from being a legitimate contender, or do you think they are now? Tell me what you think. I like to have a nice, healthy hockey discussion on this channel, so leave some comments. Don't forget to give this video a like. Consider subscribing so you can keep up with all the hockey talk, and I'll be talking to you soon.